What's going on, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. Time for Nick at Night, my weekly comic book review show. Got a bunch of books to go through. Let's go ahead and get started right now. Gonna go ahead and put my grading scale up, and you know how this works. Whenever I introduce a book, I'm gonna bring the cover of that book on the grading scale so you can see how they all stack up against each other. So with that out of the way, let's get into some Marvel real quick. We're gonna go over into Star Wars Dark Droids issue number 2. So I went into this whole run completely blind. I know there's been some kind of a Dark Droids. There's been some kind of a story out there already that took place somewhere in the known movie canon where this kind of thing kind of all happens, right? This is before Return of the Jedi, and so that kind of gives you some kind of a time frame of where we are. Luke is still learning the Force, things like that. Darth Vader's very much alive. So the Empire is still around, so we're in that original trilogy time frame with this. We have this sentient AI really kind of taken over all the other robots all throughout the Empire and through the Rebellion as well. And so it's actually taking over the minds of all these different robots. But in this issue, it explores how that expanding presence is like taking its toll on its ability to function properly. And so people are starting to notice their droids kind of going haywire. And so it's just the amount of information that this thing has to process in this collective hive mind. That's the problem. Its goal right now is to try to assimilate with the meat, right? With humans. And so it's experimenting on different human forms, trying to integrate those two. And it has its sights set on a very specific character in the Star Wars universe that has been able to manage that. And so it's kind of exciting. It's a little bit boring at the same time. And it's also one of those things I have a problem with in Star Wars in general, where it's like, whenever we look back and tell a different story, we know how it ends. Now, we don't know the specifics of that story, but generally speaking, we know how it ends. We know this doesn't go any further than this. Maybe it lives somewhere in the distance nowadays, but like, we kind of know the outcome. So it kind of spoils it for me. That's just me, though. What did you guys think? If you're reading Dark Droids number 2, let me know down below. The next Marvel book we read this week was X-Men issue number 26. Now, this is a lead-up issue and an engagement issue, in a way, between Emma Frost and Tony Stark. Interesting circumstances at which they get engaged, but you know, Emma Frost has been incognito recently, trying to hide some of her powers and whatnot, and she's kind of posing as Tony's assistant, something like that, and they're actually in this new Hellfire Club environment where there's all these different members and everything, and they kind of get wrapped up in their own agendas. Tony's heading for a very specific direction, trying to get some technology information, and Emma's trying to get revenge because she's so like revenge-stricken right now because of the whole Hellfire Gala, and so they're on their separate paths right now, but they're kind of colliding. Their interests are colliding at the moment, and they mistakenly get engaged, and it's a pretty interesting issue right there. So I'm assuming this is like one piece of like a connecting cover. I don't even know if you can see that or not, but this is basically Emma Frost in a wedding gown with like her sisters behind her and the whole X-Men and beyond behind her, and she's holding hands with someone that looks like it's going to be Tony Stark. So maybe a cool connecting cover moment right there. But interesting issue. We still have a lot of stuff between like Kitty Pryde and her, you know, her new persona or her old persona, and she's got this revenge mission right now for Firestarter, and so she's trying to get a hold of her. She's a traitor to the mutant kind, aligning with Orcus and Dr. Stasis, things like that. But there's some reconciling that goes on between them as well. So X-Men issue number 26, still very much in that post Hellfire Gala moment, and I'm liking what I'm reading so far, so I might have to jump back on the X-Men ship. This was a spot check, and I dug what I saw. What'd you guys think? All right, going over into DC, we have Batman 137. Now, I was warned by Robbie over at Pop Culture Philosophers that this is going to be a great issue, and we're going to be diving into it probably in the monthly review show at the end of this month, and I would have to highly agree with that. So we have Chip Zdarsky still on here. We got Jorge Jimenez on here as well, doing some amazing artwork on this book. It is so good. So if you read the Batman Catwoman crossover, I don't even remember what it was called, Gotham War Part 1, I believe it was, it sets up everything that's going to be going on in these DC books, or at least the Batman related ones and Catwoman ones, for the foreseeable future. So basically, while Batman was out of commission, having been in a coma after the whole Night Terrors event, Selina was training some of the run-of-the-mill criminals throughout Gotham City to be better thieves. And so in that process, crime has gone down, innocent people were not taken advantage of, and all these people were stealing from the rich essentially instead of like mugging average people on the streets, and crime overall has gone down, and it's actually got on the radar of all the rest of the Bat family, and they're kind of sitting around wondering, man, is she right? Like, what is Bruce going to do about this? He's obviously pissed off that crime still exists. Crime's always going to exist. You're never going to eliminate crime. If you can find a better way to do it, then maybe that's the outcome that you want, right? And so what's really cool about this, and I'm not going to show you any of these pages, are there's going to be confrontation between Batman and the Bat family. This book has a lot of that in there. It's very cool. There's not a whole lot of conversation. There's some conversation here and there, but I personally love who comes to the aid of Batman towards the end of this book because of the era I jumped into comics. I think I'm just a sucker for that. And so I totally dug this issue. It is so cool. I cannot wait to talk about it with the guys and gals on the monthly review show. Got to check out Batman 137. It was great. All right, let's jump into some indie books. So I was able to get my hands on Godzilla War for Humanity. This is issue number 1. Came out a couple of weeks ago, sold out really quickly at the shop. One of the creators of this book is actually local to my area, and we got a whole bunch of new copies in, so I'm excited to do this. Actually, this was the pick of the week over at Pop Culture Philosophers a few weeks ago. So this book is a pretty cool book. It actually focuses on a couple of kids in the early stages right now. They're going through like a wooded area, and they actually get in the middle of this gigantic kaiju battle with Godzilla and some other kaijus, and basically Godzilla saves the day in a way. There's a little bit of a flash forward in here, and she's kind of become a scientist obsessed with Godzilla and with kaijus in general. And she's at a panel right now, and she's explaining that, like, yeah, kaijus are a problem, but Godzilla actually saved the day because of what could have happened during that day. And she gets a little bit of heckling going on in the crowds and whatnot, but she gets brought into a larger team of scientists to take on a much larger issue that is going on right now in the world. And it is really cool to see them kind of combining their powers, figuring out what they're going to do next. One of the most charming things about this book is just like the voice of it. The reading of it was very, very straightforward and accessible. I loved that. It wasn't overly complicated, and the artwork is extremely charming and just very fun. So I dug everything about this book. It was creative. It was colorful. Such a great little read. Check out Godzilla War for Humanity. I thought it was awesome. We're going to jump over into Ahoy Comics. We have Mark Russell, one of my favorite writers of all time. We have Project Cryptid, issue number 1. And so this book actually focuses on 2 mythological creatures, in a sense. We have the Yeti essentially in here, and then we have this other thing that I never really heard of called the Mongolian death worm. So there's 2 different stories in here. The first one is about this rich guy who hires 2 Sherpas or something like that, I don't know, to navigate up the mountain, up Mount Everest, to find glory up there, right? You know, he wants to outdo the previous millionaire that decided to climb this mountain, pushing these guys to their extremes, and he actually comes face to face with the Yeti, the abominable snowman, pick your title, at the very end, and it's like not news to these guides that took him up here, and he's just the millionaire's just kind of a another victim of this situation that these guys are typically in. So that was okay. It was an interesting story, but there wasn't a whole lot there, to be honest with you. Then the Mongolian death worm is another interesting one. This guy actually gets caught out in the desert and rescued by this Mongolian death worm. He then takes it home and actually uses it as a pet. He adopts it, and there's a bunch of other mythological creatures in this cryptozoology unit. They're actually using all these other ones like Nessie and things like that. And it's like an office setting, and they're performing tasks and whatnot. I don't know, but something's wrong with his Mongolian death worm. He figures out through a series of tests and trials and errors what exactly is going on, and it's kind of like a little cute ending. So, you know, the second story was pretty cute, I thought. Overall, it was an okay book. There's another one coming out with 2 different creatures, so I'm going to be checking it out and seeing what's going on. Did you read this, and what'd you guys think? Going over to Fantagraphic Comics, we have the conclusion of Red Room Trigger Warnings, issue number 4. Wow. So I'll just say this. I thought I was desensitized to most of the things that I was reading over time in the Red Room universe. I thought I had become desensitized. This book right here reminded me that there's always a bar that you can cross, you know what I mean? And so my sensibilities and my standards were definitely put to test reading this book. I can't show you anything, but I will say that Ed Piskor's artwork in here is amazing. I absolutely love his lettering. It is so tight and beautiful, and it just fits perfectly. His coloring, his shading, his line work, everything that's going on in here, his perspectives, the detail per panel is awesome. So major props to him. He's definitely one of my favorite artists out there right now. And if you're into horror in general, you gotta check out Red Room. Every issue is an independent issue. You can pick up any one of them and then try to find the other ones if you dug that. But be warned, Crypto Killers issue number 4 is the most extreme Red Room book of the Red Room books. There's always a continuum. This book was insane. I wish I could tell you more about it or show you anything, but I don't think any page is safe for that. So if you are into the superhero comics and that's all you've done and all you've experienced, I don't know what to say. Maybe jump into a Red Room comic and see how you enjoy it. But if you're used to like extreme horror movies, things like that, I think you're going to get a kick out of these things. So check it out. All right, next we're going to go over into Image Comics. We're going to start with World Tree issue number 5. Now, I didn't review this when it came out the week before. I actually read it after the fact. And I want to let you know what my thoughts were on this one. So I'm having a little problem with James Tynion at the moment with some of his work. To be honest with you, the first issue of World Tree was very interesting to me. It had a cool premise. It had a lot of mystery and intrigue, things like that. But I get the same vibe no matter what book I'm reading from him at the moment. And I think it started around Nice House in the Lake, whenever that book kind of came out. We have a very similar situation going on right now. We kind of have like the end of the world coming, and we have this core group of people that have known each other for a long time, and they have complicated relationships, and there's this evil threat that they don't quite understand, that they're learning a little bit more about. And we keep having these flashes to the future, like we have in the beginning of this issue, that kind of give us a little bit more context of where the story might be going. So very, very similar pathways between Nice House in the Lake and World Tree so far. I don't know if I'm that interested in the problem that these characters are having at the moment, being that it's just like this weird place on the internet that kind of turns you into a killing machine in a way, right? And kind of reprograms your mind into this killing machine. And so I'm having like flashbacks to Deceased, because when they looked at their phones, they turned into like zombies and they started ripping each other apart. And I think he was around that era. Maybe that was Tom Taylor and Rosenberg or something like that. Anyways, I've seen a lot of these things play out before. And so I'm not exactly excited to see where this book goes at the moment. I know there's a lot of fans out there, but for me personally, it's not a must-read, but it is a cool story. And I'm probably still going to be spot checking it and seeing what you guys think about it. Let me know down below in the comments if you're loving it, if you're hating it. I want to hear it. Next, we have Rick Remender on The Sacrificers issue number 2. Loved issue number 1. It made, I think it was my top read of the month last month, and I also read it on Free Comic Book Day, and I loved that little introduction they gave as well. This one here, not as strong, but it was still very good. What they still continue to pull forward is this amazing artwork. They do a great job of bringing you into the shoes of anybody in this society, particularly in the ones that were picked to be the sacrificers. And we get to learn a little bit more, or maybe we don't get to learn a little bit more. We get to go on this mysterious journey that these sacrificers are on right now. They're kind of traversing all these wild lands. They're all chained together. Some of them are more full of faith, and so they know they're going to the promised land, while others are a little bit more pessimistic, and they've been chained up forever just to be sacrificed one day. And so there's a lot of conversation that happens specifically around this campfire where just their different morals start clashing. And it was kind of fun to see all those different perspectives and see what's going on. We still assume that there's some kind of like doom coming for these characters, and that maybe they're just kind of fattening them up for the sacrifice, because the ending was kind of a twist. But I still think it's going to go lead us into a dire situation. So totally love the vibe. I love the feel. I love the art. I love the language used and everything like that. This one right here is a little bit slower compared to the first one, but I totally dug it. It was a really cool read. Make sure to check out The Sacrificers. We're only 2 issues in, and it's a really good read. All right, we have a new one from Image Comics called Kill Your Darlings. This is issue number 1. It was actually written by Ethan S. Parker and Griffin Sheridan, Robert Quinn on the art, and John H. Hill on the letters. I picked this one up because there was a funny solicitation from Chip Zdarsky on this, and it was just hilarious. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I definitely have to pick this one up. And it's a new Image number 1, so like, why wouldn't you at least try it out? Now, my first impressions are amazing artwork. It was extremely creative. It reminded me of like Twig in a way, with its art and style and coloring. There's this imaginary land that this girl is living in right now. All of her stuffed animals are battling, things like that. And it kind of bounces back and forth between her, the little girl's perspective, and her imagination's perspective. And it's just so cool to see that. We do learn that this girl actually has a mother, presumably it's a single mother, and she's having to battle with all of her bills and responsibilities and jobs and things like that. So there's a lot of parental stress that's kind of filtering down on top of the child. So there's a lot to navigate from that perspective. And on top of that, we were introduced in the very beginning of this to like a Salem witch trial kind of a thing. Maybe there was some kind of atrocity that happened and there was some kind of magic that was leaked into the environment because of that. And maybe some of that power is still lingering and it's actually affecting our little girl here and her imagination and things like that. And there's some kind of evil that's starting to come out because of it. So very, very great book, man. I loved this one so much. I love the art. I love how kind of shiny and foggy things look to be. I don't know. I kind of dug that style. And yeah, this book reminds me a little bit of something epic. So if you like the vibe of something epic with the imagination of a child and having that come to life in a way, I think you're going to really dig this book. So make sure to check this one out. It was really cool. And the last book we're going to go over this week is W. Maxwell Prince and Philip Andrade's Swan Song, issue number 3. Another amazing issue of Swan Song. 3 in a row, just completely knocking it out. I absolutely loved it, man. This was so cool. This one's actually about the end of the world, an apocalyptic time, kind of like a Fallout kind of a situation. We have one bunker that opens up with a female. We have another bunker down the road that opens up and a male comes out. So they're essentially Adam and Eve in this new world, walking around, exploring the environment, living off their rations, being introduced to new wildlife, new surroundings, things like that, and developing a relationship, and a rather twisted relationship because they base a lot of their morals, their objectives, their code of ethics on whatever books they had around them at the time. And this male character, our Adam character, whatever he was called, actually has this zombie survival handbook. And so they're actually basing a lot of their personal laws of their society that they're building between the two of them on the laws that they have on here. And so we get to see what that means when they see other people finally come into their area. Man, it was an extremely beautiful book, very much rooted in like an Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden situation. And, you know, there's clearly a lot of lines that can be drawn about, you know, where you put your faith, how you execute the rules in your life, things like that, and what kind of impact that has on others. So there's a lot of things going on in this book. Really great read though. Swan Songs issue number 3. You got to be reading it. So guys, that's everything I read this week. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know down below in the comments what you read and what your favorite books of the week were. And while you're down there, hit that like button, check out the subscribe button, and check out the join button. I would really appreciate it. But as always, thanks again for watching. Happy reading. See you in the comments.